Imagine this. A quiet suburban neighborhood shattered by the flash of a gun barrel pointed straight at a young woman's face. All because some overzealous HOA security guard thought she was trespassing on her own property. But what he didn't know was that the woman he just threatened was no ordinary homeowner. She was an elite FBI tactical commander, trained to take down the world's most dangerous criminals. And this mistake? It was about to unleash a nightmare on that entire gated community that no one saw coming. Stick around because this story of power, revenge, and total HOA meltdown will leave you speechless. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel where we expose the wildest HOA horror stories straight from the suburbs. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a drama-filled upload. Smash the like button if you've ever dealt with a nosy neighbor or power-tripping board member. It helps the algorithm push these tales to more victims like you. Alright, let's dive right in. It was a sweltering Friday afternoon in the meticulously manicured enclave of Willow Creek Estates. The kind of place where every lawn was clipped to perfection, every mailbox matched the colonial facades, and every resident paid top dollar to live under the iron fist of the Homeowners Association. The streets were lined with identical McMansions, their driveways gleaming with luxury SUVs, and the air hummed with the distant whir of golf carts patrolling the perimeter like self-appointed sheriffs. At the heart of it all stood the Anderson family home, a sprawling two-story colonial that had been in the family for generations, passed down from Sarah Anderson's grandparents who built the neighborhood from scratch back in the 70s. Sarah, a no-nonsense single mom in her mid-40s, had moved back in with her 28-year-old daughter Mia, just 6 months earlier after a messy divorce left her craving the comfort of familiarity. Mia, with her sharp features, athletic build, and a perpetual air of quiet authority, had always been the family's pride. Top of her class at Quantico, now a rising star in the FBI's Tactical Operations Unit, specializing in high-risk extractions and SWAT-level interventions. But to the neighbors, she was just that intense girl who visits on weekends, her unmarked black Tahoe blending into the sea of similar vehicles. Little did they know, Mia's visits weren't casual. They were her sanctuary, a place to decompress from the adrenaline-fueled chaos of federal fieldwork. That Friday, Sarah had texted Mia to swing by after her shift for a home-cooked barbecue. Nothing fancy, just ribs, coleslaw, and a chance to catch up before Mia shipped out for a classified op in the Midwest. Mia arrived right on time, pulling into the driveway just as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the cul-de-sac. She stepped out in her civilian gear, fitted jeans, a simple black tee, and a lightweight jacket that concealed her off-duty holster, a habit she couldn't shake, even in the safety of suburbia. Slipping her keys into her pocket, she rounded the Tahoe to grab the bottle of wine from the passenger seat when it happened. From the corner of her eye, she spotted him, a burly man in an ill-fitting polo shirt emblazoned with Willow Creek Security, his face flushed red under a cheap baseball cap, storming toward her with purpose. His name was Todd Hargrove, a 52-year-old retired mall cop who'd landed the HOA gig after years of bouncing between dead-end jobs, his ego inflated by the badge clipped to his belt and the golf cart keys that made him feel like the king of the block. Todd had been circling the neighborhood all day, clipboard in hand, doling out citations for everything from unapproved bird feeders to slightly overgrown hostas. Sarah's yard had caught his eye earlier that week, a single dandelion poking through the grass, a violation of Rule 7.2b, and he'd been itching for a confrontation. But today, seeing Mia's unfamiliar face and the out-of-state plates on her vehicle, courtesy of her FBI-issued ride, which she hadn't bothered to swap, he assumed she was some renter or worse, a squatter trying to game the system. "Hey, you there!" Todd bellowed, his voice cutting through the humid air like a dull knife. He closed the distance in seconds, his hand already twitching toward the holster on his hip. Where a compact 9mm rested, not standard issue for HOA patrols, but one he'd insisted on after that incident with the teenagers last summer. Mia froze for a split second, her training kicking in. Assess, de-escalate, but never turn your back. She straightened slowly, hands visible at her sides, her expression calm as a still pond. "Everything okay?" she asked evenly, though inside her pulse quickened, not from fear but from the familiar surge of operational awareness. Todd didn't stop, didn't slow. He jabbed a meaty finger toward the house. "This ain't your property, Missy. We've got strict rules here, no loitering, no unauthorized vehicles." You got ID? Or do I need to call the real cops? His breath reeked of cheap coffee and entitlement, and as Mia reached for her wallet, he mistook the motion for defiance. In a flash of misplaced bravado, Todd yanked his pistol free, leveling it at her chest with trembling hands. Hands up, now! You're trespassing, and I ain't asking twice. Time seemed to stretch in that moment, the world narrowing to the cold glint of steel and the distant hum of a lawnmower oblivious to the standoff. Mia's eyes locked onto his, her body coiled like a spring, every fiber of her being screaming to disarm him in under 3 seconds. A sweep of the arm, a twist of the wrist, and he'd be on the ground, cuffed with his own zip ties. But she held back. This wasn't a cartel hideout or a hostage siege. This was her mother's driveway, and escalation here could unravel everything. Instead, she raised her hands slowly, palms out, her voice steady as granite. Sir, I'm just visiting family. Let's put the gun down and talk this out. But Todd, high on his own authority, wasn't listening. He thumbed the safety off with a click that echoed like thunder, his finger hovering too close to the trigger for any sane person's comfort. Sarah, hearing the commotion from inside where she was preheating the grill, flung open the front door, her face paling at the sight. Todd, what in God's name? But he cut her off with a wild wave of the gun, keeping it trained on Mia. Stay inside, Sarah. This one's trouble. I caught her red-handed. The neighbors began to peek from behind curtains, phones slipping into hands as whispers of shooting rippled through the group chat. Mia's mind raced. One wrong move and this powder keg blows. She could see it all unfolding. The headlines, the internal affairs nightmare, the way her career would be dissected in the aftermath. But beneath the calculation burned a deeper fury. This clown in his polyester uniform daring to pull a weapon on her soil. As Todd barked orders for her to back away from the vehicle, Mia made her choice. With surgical precision, she stepped forward, not in attack but in revelation. She slipped her jacket open just enough to flash the gold shield clipped to her belt, the eagle emblem catching the fading light. FBI, lower your weapon now. Todd's eyes bulged, the color draining from his face as the reality hit him like a freight train. The gun wavered, but his pride wouldn't let him drop it, not yet. Bull, you're lying. Prove it. Mia's gaze hardened, her voice dropping to the low timbre she reserved for interrogations. Badge number 47291, Special Agent Mia Anderson, Tactical Response Unit. You just assaulted a federal officer. Holster it or I'll make sure you do. The standoff hung in the air, thick as the barbecue smoke starting to curl from the grill, and as Todd's finger finally eased off the trigger. The first sirens wailed in the distance, Sarah's frantic 911 call paying off. But this was just the spark. The fire that would consume Willow Creek had only begun to ignite. Little did Todd know, by pulling that trigger-happy stunt, he'd poked a hornet's nest that would buzz through every board meeting, every petty dispute, until the entire HOA crumbled under the weight of its own hypocrisy. As the patrol cars screeched to a halt in front of the Anderson home, their lights painting the pristine facade in pulsing blues and reds, the Willow Creek neighborhood held its collective breath. Officer Ramirez, a seasoned veteran from the local PD with a no-nonsense mustache and a coffee stain on his tie, stepped out first, his hand resting casually on his own service weapon as he assessed the scene. Todd Hargrove still clutched his pistol in a white-knuckled grip, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cooling evening air, while Mia stood statue still, her FBI badge now fully exposed and glinting under the cruiser headlights. Sarah hovered in the doorway, her apron dusted with flour from the interrupted meal prep, her eyes darting between her daughter and the man who'd turned their quiet evening into a potential bloodbath. Everyone, weapons down now, Ramirez barked, his partner flanking him with a shotgun at low ready. Todd's bluster evaporated like mist. He fumbled the gun back into its holster, stammering excuses about protocol and protecting the community. Mia, ever the professional, kept her hands visible until Ramirez nodded her clearance. Then she lowered them, rolling her shoulders to shake off the tension. Agent Anderson, she introduced herself crisply, handing over her credentials without flourish. Ramirez's eyebrows shot up as he scanned the ID, the weight of federal involvement settling over the scene like a storm cloud. Ma'am, you want to walk me through this? Mia did, her recounting precise and unemotional. Arrival time, Todd's approach, the draw, the threat. No embellishments, just facts that painted a damning picture. Todd tried to interject. She looked suspicious. Out-of-state plates, no visitor pass. But Ramirez silenced him with a glare that could curdle milk. By the time the statements were taken and Todd was cuffed in the back of a cruiser, not for arrest yet, but for officer safety, the neighbors had formed a semicircle at the property line, their whispers turning to outright murmurs. Evelyn Pritchard, the pearl-clutching queen of the HOA board, stood at the forefront in her monogrammed cardigan, her lips pursed so tight they could crack walnuts. She'd spearheaded Todd's hiring 6 months back, touting him as the strong arm Willow Creek needed after a string of minor vandalisms, mostly kids TPing mailboxes. Now, as the cruiser pulled away with Todd's golf cart impounded in tow, Evelyn's mind whirred with damage control. This wasn't just a bad look. It was a liability bomb, and with Mia's FBI status confirmed via a quick radio check to Quantico, the fallout was inevitable. Inside the house, Sarah poured Mia a stiff glass of the wine she'd brought, her hands shaking as she sank onto the kitchen stool. "I can't believe that idiot. Pulling a gun on you in our driveway." Mia accepted the glass but didn't drink, her tactical mind already dissecting the evening's events like a post-op debrief. "Mom, it's fine. I've faced worse in training sims, but this is personal now." She pulled out her phone, snapping photos of the driveway scuff marks where Todd had planted his boots, documenting every angle with the meticulousness of someone who'd testify in federal court. Sarah watched, a mix of pride and worry etching deeper lines on her face. "What are you going to do?" Mia's eyes met hers, a spark of that commander fire igniting. "Follow protocol. File the report, loop in my SAC, but off the record, that HOA's been a thorn since Grandpa built this place. Time to pull it out." By midnight, the cruisers were gone, the neighbors dispersed to their wine coolers and gossip sessions, but sleep evaded the Andersons. Mia spent the wee hours on a secure line with her supervisor, recounting the incident in coded legalese that masked the raw edge of her anger. "Affirmative, sir. Civilian security contractor brandished firearm during routine property access. No shots fired, but escalation imminent." Her boss, a grizzled ex-Marine named Harlan, chuckled dryly through the static. "Sounds like suburbia just declared war on the Bureau. Paperwork's a beast, but if you want backup for the civil suit, say the word." Mia declined for now. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about justice, the kind that exposed the rot beneath Willow Creek's perfect veneer. Come morning, the neighborhood awoke to the buzz of texts and emails. An emergency HOA meeting called for noon. Agenda Item 1, Security Incident Review. Evelyn had fired off the notice at dawn, her fingers flying over her iPad as she crafted a narrative of misunderstanding and overzealous protection. But Mia had other plans. She rose early, slipping into her most unassuming attire, a sundress that screamed harmless suburbanite, and headed to the community center, Sarah trailing behind with a tray of store-bought cookies as camouflage. The meeting room was packed, folding chairs scraping against linoleum as residents filed in, their faces a gallery of curiosity and concealed glee. At the head table sat the board, Evelyn, flanked by her yes-men, Bob the accountant with his perpetual frown, and Linda the busybody florist, whose azaleas had once earned a violation for being too vibrant. Todd was absent, on administrative leave, but his shadow loomed large. Evelyn cleared her throat, launching into her prepared speech about unity and misplaced zeal. But Mia waited in the back, arms crossed, letting the platitudes wash over her like so much white noise. When the floor opened for comments, she rose, her voice slicing through the murmurs like a knife. "I'd like to address the room." Heads turned, recognition dawning as Evelyn's smile faltered. "Ms. Anderson, we appreciate your perspective, but this is an internal matter." Mia didn't sit. With all due respect, when a civilian pulls a loaded weapon on a federal agent, it stops being internal. It becomes a matter of public record and potential felony charges. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Bob choked on his water. Mia continued, laying out the facts with the precision of a closing argument. The draw, the threats, the violation not just of law, but of basic human decency. This isn't about one bad apple. It's about a system that empowers amateurs to play cop, armed and unchecked. The room erupted, some nodding in agreement, others defending Todd as just doing his job. Evelyn pounded her gavel, calling for order, but the damage was done. As the meeting dissolved into chaos, Mia slipped out, already drafting her formal complaint to the HOA's insurance carrier, CCing the local DA and her FBI liaison. But the real storm was brewing elsewhere. Unbeknownst to the board, Todd, stewing in his bachelor pad with a six-pack and a grudge, had started making calls. First to his cousin in the county sheriff's office, spinning a tale of FBI overreach, then to a shady PI he'd used back in his mall cop days, whispering about digging dirt on the Andersons. He uncovered scraps. Sarah's divorce records, Mia's classified postings redacted to hell, even a decade-old parking ticket from Mia's college days. It wasn't much, but in Todd's fevered mind it was ammunition. By evening, he'd leaked the dossier to the neighborhood Facebook group. Anonymous posts accusing Mia of being a Fed plant stirring trouble, and Sarah of harboring grudges against the community. The vitriol spread like wildfire, likes and shares piling up as fear-mongering took hold. Mia saw it all from her laptop, a grim smile tugging at her lips. If they wanted war, she'd give them one. Not with bullets, but with the unyielding machinery of the law. She fired off a cease and desist to the group admins, then looped in the FBI's cyber unit for good measure. As night fell, Sarah joined her on the porch. The barbecue remnants cleared away, but the tension lingering. They're turning on us, Mia. Decades of barbecues and block parties gone. Mia squeezed her hand, her resolve steel. Let them. Truth has a way of burning brighter than lies. But as crickets chirped in the flawless yard, a shadow moved across the street. Evelyn, binoculars in hand, watching. The board was plotting their counterstrike, subpoenas for security footage, character witnesses lined up. Willow Creek was fracturing, alliances shifting like sand, and Mia knew the next move would come hard and fast. She just had to be ready, because when the FBI tactical commander draws her line, no HOA busybody crosses it unscathed. The following week dawned with a subpoena server pounding on the Anderson door at 7 a.m. sharp, a harried process clerk in a rumpled suit thrusting papers into Sarah's night-gowned hands before vanishing back to his sedan. HOA versus Hargrove. Deposition notice, the cover sheet read. Evelyn's signature scrawled at the bottom like a venomous signature. Sarah's stomach twisted as she scanned the legalese. Demands for Mia's travel logs, security cam access, even witness statements from the barbecue night. Though the grill had long since cooled, its secrets seared into memory alone. She texted Mia, still en route from a dawn briefing at the field office, and by 8:15, her daughter was back, shield in one hand, legal pad in the other. They're suing Todd for wrongful termination to discredit me, Mia surmised, flipping through the pages with a clinician's detachment. Classic deflection. Make it about his rights so they can paint me as the aggressor. Sarah paced the kitchen, her bare feet slapping against the slate tile. But the gun, Mia, the gun. How do they spin that? Mia set the papers down, her mind already 3 steps ahead. They don't. They bury it in motions and mediations until everyone forgets. But I won't let them. She placed a call to the U.S. Attorney's office, her voice shifting into that authoritative cadence that commanded rooms full of hardened agents. Agent Anderson here. Need a consult on a civilian assault escalating to HOA litigation. Potential civil rights angle. The response was swift. A junior prosecutor named Reyes, eager for high-profile cases, agreed to review the file by end of day. Meanwhile, across town, Evelyn convened the board in her sunroom, the air thick with chamomile tea and conspiracy. Bob adjusted his glasses, tallying potential legal fees on a spreadsheet that bled red. This could bankrupt us, Ev. Insurance might cover, but if the feds get involved... Linda fidgeted with her pearl necklace, her florist fingers twitching. We stand by Todd. He's family. Kept those hoodlums from the park out last year. Evelyn leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with the fervor of a general. Exactly. We countersue for defamation. Claim Anderson's blowing this out of proportion to bully her way onto the board. The plan coalesced. Hire a cut-rate attorney from the strip mall firm, flood the courts with motions, and rally the residents with a support our security petition, circulating door to door. By noon, clipboards were in play, Evelyn's daughter manning the cul-de-sac with glossy flyers decrying federal overreach in our backyards. The neighborhood split like a fault line. The old-timers, loyal to the Andersons' legacy, signed Mia's counter-petition for an independent audit of HOA funds. Rumors of Todd's overtime padding had circulated for months. The newcomers, lured by the gates and guards, flocked to Evelyn, their fears stoked by Todd's anonymous posts now evolving into full-blown email chains, alleging Mia's surveillance state tactics. Todd himself holed up in a seedy motel after his wife kicked him out. "Can't have a loose cannon in the house, literally," she'd snapped, nursed his grievances with bourbon and burner phones. He'd escalated, tipping off a local tabloid hack about the FBI housewife scandal, complete with blurry photos of Mia's Tahoe parked innocently in the drive. The story hit online by evening. "Suburban moms fed daughter sparks gun standoff, is your neighborhood next?" Clicks soared, comment sections ablaze with armchair experts decrying deep state suburbia. Mia caught wind during her lunch break. Reyes already on the line. "This is harassment, plain and simple," the prosecutor growled. "File for a protection order. We'll move on the assault charges tomorrow." Mia nodded to her empty office, adrenaline humming. Back home, she found Sarah fielding calls from reporters camped at the corner. Vultures in rental cars, notebooks poised. "No comment," Mia instructed, herding her mom inside and drawing the blinds. But the siege had begun, drones buzzing overhead, courtesy of a tech bro neighbor testing his new toy. Solicitors at the door with HOA loyalty oaths, even slashed tires on the family sedan. Petty sabotage, but enough to fray nerves. Mia's FBI instincts flared. She swept the property for bugs, none. Installed trail cams, overkill but satisfying, and drafted a blistering op-ed for the local paper. Submitted under Sarah's byline to keep her professional distance. Willow Creek from dream community to nightmare enclave, it began. Detailing decades of board overreach, from fining widowers for unkempt grief gardens to strong-arming foreclosures on minor dues slips. Published at midnight, it went viral locally, shares tripling as residents unearthed their own horror tales in the comments. Evelyn's petition faltered, signatures evaporating overnight. Desperate, the board called an all-hands emergency session at the clubhouse, but turnout was dismal. Half the chairs empty, the air stale with defeat. Todd, summoned as a key witness, arrived disheveled, his tale of woe met with skeptical glances. "She provoked me," he insisted, but cracks showed. Whispers of his prior complaints. The mall cop brutality suit settled out of court years back. Mia didn't attend. Instead, she met Reyes at a neutral diner, handing over a USB drive crammed with evidence. Body cam footage from a neighbor's ring, subpoenaed quietly. Todd's social media rants archived via Wayback. Even financials showing HOA kickbacks to his security firm, a one-man LLC. "Ironclad," Reyes murmured, pocketing the drive. "Charges stick. Civil suit's a slam dunk." As the meeting raged on without resolution, a process server slipped through the shadows, slapping Evelyn with Mia's countersuit. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, conspiracy to defame, and a RICO nod for the racketeering vibes of their petty empire. The boardwoman crumpled the papers, her empire teetering. Back at the Anderson home, under a canopy of stars unmarred by streetlights, Mia and Sarah shared a quiet toast. Not with wine, but with iced tea, the grill finally fired up for a belated meal. "It's breaking them," Sarah said, ribs sizzling. Mia nodded, but her eyes scanned the dark. "Not yet. They fight dirty when cornered," and she was right. Dawn brought the escalation. A brick through the living room window. "Fed go home" scrawled in red paint. Todd's handiwork obvious from the sloppy angle. Sirens wailed again, but this time it was federal. FBI techs swarming the scene. Forensics dusting for prints while Mia coordinated from the porch, her tactical vest swapped for a windbreaker. The neighborhood watched in horror as yellow tape cordoned the yard. The perfect lawn's now a crime scene. Evelyn's phone rang off the hook. Residents demanding refunds, lawyers circling like sharks. Todd picked up blocks away in his golf cart, spilled everything in interrogation. Names, dates, the whole corrupt web. By week's end, indictments flew. Assault for Todd, fraud for the board. Willow Creek's gates creaked open wider. The security contract shredded. But as Mia packed for her Midwest op, a final envelope arrived. Evelyn's resignation letter, laced with veiled threats. "This isn't over," it hissed. Mia archived it, a faint smile playing. For her, it was just another closed case. For the suburbs, it was a reckoning long overdue. Yet in the quiet that followed, a new whisper stirred. Other neighborhoods, other Todds waiting for their own commander to call them out. The war on petty tyrants had only just begun, and Willow Creek was ground zero. What a wild ride through the gates of Willow Creek, proof that no HOA is bulletproof when karma comes calling with a badge. If this story had you raging or fist-pumping, drop a like, subscribe for more unfiltered suburbia showdowns, and comment below. What's your craziest HOA tale? Hit notifications, share with that neighbor who needs a wake-up call, and we'll see you in the next one. Stay fierce out there.